Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for tuning in once again for another film stock review. And it is one of the more frustrating ones that I have made because I feel like sometimes there is some sort of a curse around some film stocks. For me personally, I have had a similar issue with Portra 400. I have not once been able to shoot a full roll of Portra 400 because every time I tried, everything that could go wrong just did go wrong for me. Either I loaded the film incorrectly and thus completely destroyed my roll, or I unloaded it incorrectly, just stubbornly winding the film in the wrong direction despite the resistance I could feel, making my finished film roll just look like a scrunched up mess and like someone had blown their nose into my negatives. Or I just entirely messed up on my camera settings, making the photos completely unsalvageable. For some reason, this curse or whatever seemed to follow me into this film stock as well. And so it took various frustrating tries for me to actually be able to try it out and see what the results would look like. So today's film stock is the new LOMOCHROME 92 by Lomography, or at least it was new at the time when I started my unsuccessful attempts. And my very first roll of this film was graciously given to me by Lomography France for me to try out, not to damage. So I would really like to thank them for their patience with me while I struggled on my saga of just misfortune. Long story short, this was through no fault of my own, but I handed over this first roll to a lab for development and scanning, and the roll was first of all lost, then found a few weeks later, then it was lost again, then it was found again, then it was scanned in a very strange way. I do not understand what happened there. What I do believe though was that it was kind of developed incorrectly, and then they have tried to compensate for it in the scanning by overexposing the negatives, and that definitely did not do this film stock justice. I am still going to show you some of the better pictures from this roll because I had it rescanned and the lab tried their best to salvage whatever went wrong the first time around. And also because I shot this film afterwards for a second time and the light conditions were completely different. So I do think that it is relevant to show you both because this film stock does react differently to different light situations, and I think that is interesting to explore. What I do need to point out though is that even though this film is grainy, my first batch of photos was particularly grainy and there was just a lot of noise in the photos. So I just want to make it clear that even though LOMOCHROME 92 is a grainy film, the grain in my first set of pictures is just really much stronger than what is the norm. I'm going to make sure to point it out in this video so that you know which grain is normal for this film and which grain is just over pronounced due to the problems I faced. So about this film stock, it was first released last year on Lomography's 30-year anniversary, and it is part of the LOMOCHROME series, which you surely know. Those film stocks are all quite experimental, some with significant color shifts like LOMOCHROME Purple, and others with a lesser but still significant kind of color offset like Lomography Metropolis. As far as this film stock's grain goes, it is most comparable in my opinion to Lomography Metropolis. Both of them are 400 ISO film stocks and both come with pronounced grain. However, the color palette of LOMO 92 is very different to the one of LOMOCHROME Metropolis and is much more on the natural side of things. This film stock is one of the most natural out of the whole series. But that being said, it still has its own very unique rendition, its own character, and so it is very recognizable, and so it really sets itself apart from the other ones. So this film is a completely new formula. It is not a respooled, repackaged film stock. It really is brand new. And just in general terms, as an analog photographer, it is always so nice to see new film releases with new formulas, and Lomography are and have always been really good at this. They are not scared to experiment with their formulas, which is great because they also make us as photographers experiment more, kind of step out of our comfort zone and think outside of the box ourselves, which is always fun. It switches things up a little and it makes you really think about your specific film stock that you're using, the conditions, the desired result, and it helps you really play around with its attributes. Now, I had read and seen before that this film stock really makes specific colors pop, such as red, yellow, green, and blue. And this is why I took out my first roll into Paris, Chinatown, because there are just so many storefronts and restaurants with just an abundance of these colors incorporated into their signs and into their decoration. So I thought it was going to be the perfect place to try it out. It was also a bright and sunny day, which made the colors pop a little more than the cooler light that I had for my second try, and it made the tones so much warmer and more vibrant. But this is of course the roll that was ruined in the lab, so these are the grainier ones. As you can see, some of the photos were just outright completely ruined, and others were a little better, but they still just have so much color noise in them, which once again is really not the fault of this film stock, but more so the processing. Thankfully, Lomo 92 is not super expensive, which is always great news, and this allowed me to just try it once again. And for the second try, I took it out in Prague, which is where I was born in 1992, and I went to the actual neighborhood where I grew up because, I don't know, for me it was on theme with Lomo 92, and it's quite an urban environment in which I think this film stock really thrives. You can see that this film stock has this cool, soft rendition, and hand in hand with the grain that really does provide a very vintage sort of feeling, which lomography were specifically going after. But all of this without distorting the colors, which do remain quite natural and quite realistic. Some colors and some tones are slightly more muted, whilst other colors really pop, specifically red, which is just very punchy, yellow, which tends to be more pastel but really stands out as well. And once again, lighting is really going to make a big difference with your colors, because with warmer sunshine, the colors were that much more saturated. With cooler winter light, the tones were once again more muted. Like I said, the ISO of this film stock is 400, so it's going to be more forgiving in mixed light, but I do think that it particularly loves warm, sunny, natural light. This is also confirmed in Lomography's press release about this film stock, so those are probably going to be the best conditions to make this film really shine. Of course, low lighting is also going to slightly accentuate the already present grain, so please keep that in mind. But you can also see in some of my pictures, like this one, that despite the pronounced grain, when shot right, a lot of detail is carried throughout this grain, and so the details do look crisp. One thing that I particularly enjoyed with this film stock was playing around with the depth of field, because combined with all of its other features, I feel like it really brings about this beautiful effect. And some of my favorite pictures shot on this film were the ones where I really played around with aperture, like this one for example, where I feel like it really turned out great. The film also did quite good with backlight, which I wasn't expecting, and once again, when I got the light and focus right, the details were really great and crisp. Of course, it wouldn't be a bad luck streak if I didn't continue it myself through my own stupid error, but I got a little too excited when I finished my second roll. I opened the hatch of the camera and just caused a bunch of light leaks on a lot of my photos, so I'm showing you those regardless. However, those are not typical for this film stock, that's just my own wrongdoing. Even though it did make some of the pictures look a little more artistic, others not so much. Yeah, I really went full paparazzi mode on my mom's puppy, Pixie, because she was so small and I just wanted to freeze that moment in time because she grows so fast. Now, like I said, grain is present. It is almost an integral part of this film, so definitely don't expect to be able to zoom into infinity and see details, because this is just not the type of film for that. But despite the grain, I found that it handles the textures very well. Like here you can see all these different textures on the water, and I just thought that it was really beautiful, and I was not mad at this retro kind of imperfect feel. The contrast of this film is also quite strong, which together with the grain and color again adds to its uniqueness. And whilst on the ruined roll, the shadows and the black tones were just a super noisy mess, with my second roll I found the shadows to be quite dark. Of course, again with prevalent grain, but quite deep nonetheless. In general, and I think I'm not the only one to think this, with new film stocks coming out, this just really fills you with a feeling that film is still alive and well. We can still get surprises, we can still get to try out new things, and there's no reason for us to be confined in shooting the same films over and over again. It's always going to be exciting for me to try out different ones, the ones that make me think outside the box, the ones that make me adapt kind of, and of course, different strokes for different folks. Different situations will obviously demand different features of a film stock. So if you really want that classical film look where you know 100% what to expect, then you may want to go for a different film stock for that occasion. But with more experimental film stocks, like I consider this one to be, you really have to look at them through that lens. Was I late to the party? Yes, very. But will I come back? I will come back. There's so many different things that I still want to try with this film stock, because I do think it is quite versatile, but it's also always going to add its own bit of character into whatever scene you're shooting. So for example, I really want to try this film stock with flash, because I really think that it's going to be interesting to compare the different effects. I will likely reach for it, especially for cityscapes and, urban photography, but I think it's also going to have its place in landscapes and in nature, like I said before. And don't forget, this film came out in 35mm, but also medium format. That's about all for me. Let me know, have you tried this film stock? Did you like this film stock? And I would just like to know your thoughts because there's maybe something that I missed. I always want to hear your opinion. And in the meantime, I'm going to wish you an amazing day. I hope you take some beautiful pictures. Thank you for tuning in as always, and take care. I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.